It's another day, another video, and it is your favorite white woman YouTuber back again with another video. And in this video, we are going to be getting into why, for some reason, white people are the only race that can be racist and black people, for some reason, can't be. But before we get into the video, make sure you guys like the video as much as possible, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so that you get notified when one of my new videos come out, and let us get into the video.
And from the World Cinema in Herne Hill to our own little cinema here in SW1, Monroe joins us now. Thanks for joining us and for your take. Michael, do you agree? Is Britain a deeply racist society?
I hadn't thought so. I don't think I've thought about things as deeply and carefully as Monroe has, perhaps, but I didn't think it was deeply institutionally racist. I thought the point that you made in the film, which absolutely does echo, is the historic point that, you know, if you take the United States, it's built on the suppression of the African American, the Native American, and many immigrant classes, and our society built a lot of its wealth on slavery. But whereas when I go to the United States, I feel that that has left the most tremendous legacy, which is highly relevant today, I somehow don't get the same feeling in this country about the relevance. I mean, your appreciation of the relevance will be different from mine.
Of course, because it's my lived experience, and you would never have experienced racism yourself. But I don't think that it's helpful to compare nations. I don't think that, I mean, racism in Australia is different to racism in the UK, but comparing different racisms between different nations isn't really helpful. I think our racism is insidious and we don't talk about it, and we're not confronted with it in you know, police shooting down people in the street. We don't have that explicitness that America has. It's very behind closed doors, and we're very British about our racism. So that's probably why you haven't felt it.
The more I listen to these woke people speak, the more my brain becomes lower IQ, because these people just repeat the same things over and over again and use the same buzzwords over and over again. Explicitness, bias, behind closed doors, that type of racism. There's only one type of racism, but for some reason you people want to change that definition to suit your agenda. It's all nonsense, and you just want racism to continue to live on because you guys like playing victim.
Just in the figures as well, that one of the groups that was very disadvantaged in this, sorry, I'm falling into the language, one of the groups that performed very poorly, whether they were disadvantaged or not is an open question, was the white working class boy.
Yes.
I mean, they came almost below any category in the entire list. Now, that isn't racism, presumably, is it? There's a social problem there. So
that's class.
But so but what I'm suggesting is that you're making a leap from what emerged in these figures to saying that the cause must be victimization, victimhood, must be racist, whereas some of the elements clearly were not racist. There are problems there which aren't. I don't think
the inquiry was just on race. I think it's intersections. So you've got intersections of race and class, which do often meet. So I don't necessarily think that we can always just kind of pick bits and bobs out. We need to look at the whole thing.
Ed, are we a deeply racist society?
I think the thing I didn't agree with in the film was the pessimism at the end, that it's too late, that it's inevitable. But I think the reality is that the figures should challenge every institution to try and answer that question for itself in a proactive way. The reality is, you can say, but actually, look, it's also about poverty, it's also about where you live. But in the end, those become excuses, because it's also the case that it's harder to get on and succeed because of the colour of your skin in our country. And I think the powerful argument you make is that simply, if you are in an institution, whether that's the board of directors or a police chief constable, it's not enough to say, I'm not racist.
Yes.
You have to prove that in the actions you take every day as an institution, because unless you're on the front foot and actually doing something about it, the status quo is not a fair status quo on racial terms. And so therefore, but surely if we are proactive, it's not inevitable.
Not proactive. That's what I was talking about.
But it's not inevitable.
I think I'm yet to see it. And we live in a society where we won't even talk about it. So until we actually we've only just really started talking about modern day racism. When we talk about racism, we're always, either talking, sorry to bring up what you talked about, but we're either comparing to America, which is wholly, wholly different. The history is very, very different. We celebrate the empire here, but the empire has a horrible history for people of colour. But we have a multicultural society. So there's this imbalance, and especially when it comes to education, the whole system needs to change.
But
let me look at education. Let's look at the figures on education. 33% of white kids go to university or further education. 37% of black kids go to university or further education. 67% of Indian kids go to university or further education. 76% of Chinese kids go to university or further education. Where's the racism in that?
I am so glad that he brought that up, because I've talked about this in previous videos of mine, how Asians perform better than white and black people, but they don't seem to talk about what they would call in this situation Asian privilege. That just goes to show you they just want to be victims and they just want to complain about everything, because we know other races perform better than white people, but yet they don't talk about the systematic powers that Asians have. They just love to complain because complaining is an easy thing to do, and to change yourself and to look at yourself in the mirror and change who you are is a hard thing to do, and most people don't want to do that, which is why you see most people out on the street complaining about racism, complaining about sexism, complaining about white male privilege and all of this other nonsense. That's all these woke people do 24/7. They complain and complain and complain.
I'm talking about how people's history and how people's
But I'm talking about now and the chances of young children.
I'm not talking about their...
But what's wrong with these figures?
I'm about to tell you. I'm not talking about their academic performance. I'm talking about how we are taught about each other. If black kids aren't being taught about their histories, if we're being taught, that white history is paramount, that's essentially feeding into a white supremacist narrative. We can't be teaching kids that white is the default, that white people's history is the sole history of this country. We need to be taught about black contributions and other contributions of other cultures within society.
But for most people, what racism is and what they'd like to improve is the chances of people getting on regardless of the colour of your skin.
That's not just racism, though. I'm talking about the mental health.
But it's still quite an important thing. And these figures would suggest that as a country, we're doing reasonably well.
No, that's facts and figures.
But you think, facts and figures are important. But you think
I think it goes deeper
that we are irredeemably racist, don't you?
What, this society?
Quite
I do. I do. Unfortunately, I do. I think that the success of Britain is literally based on racism.
And do you think we're irredeemably sexist as well?
100%.
But if you take something like gender,
I think
we are making advances in terms of gender pay.
Until you get all men smashing down the patriarchy, we are going to be on that page. So I think, yes,
but we can make progress.
I think we can make progress and we can combat it.
But if it's irredeemable, you can't make progress.
And once again, he makes another good point. If something is irredeemable, what are you progressing in? You're not progressing to anything because that thing is irredeemable. But as I've said, these people most times just say nothing and just say buzzwords because it sounds good, and they repeat it and regurgitate it until people begin to believe the lie and believe that the lie is actually what is true. And I can point to other nations and other people and other figures who have done the exact same thing and told a lie long enough that the people began to believe it was true.
I mean, it's fighting human nature, and humans are flawed.
But humans are flawed, but you seem to think that white people are uniquely evil.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that individual people are unique.
Well,
I'm talking about society.
No. You said whites are the most violent and oppressive people.
Well, yeah.
That's what you said in your film.
And if you're going to go back
so that
to
would seem to me that
statistics point that out too.
Really? Well,
yes.
The Chinese were massacring Chinese and other races long before they'd ever met a white person. Attila the Hun wasn't white. It's the same in the subcontinent if you go back hundreds of years as well. The genocide in Rwanda was black on black. So is the Congo, which is the rape capital of the world. These things have got nothing to do with white people.
Okay, and I feel like this situation where I'm sat on a couch trying to justify my feelings towards racism and trying to justify why we're in this situation with the findings of the government. Facts and figures of people going to university is not reflective of the mental health of people of colour. It's not reflective of how people of colour are taught about their own histories, taught about the progress and where we come from. That is not reflective, and that is not indicative, that what you've got in front of you, that's not indicative of a fair state of affairs within this society.
So basically what's happening right now is you're just making it up as you go along, because apparently you don't care about the facts and the stats that are in front of you. It's just how you feel.
But do you think, on the other hand, that if a lesson that emerges from all of this
Yes.
is that people of colour are victims in some way, do you not see dangers in that? Do you not see that people may just believe the whole thing is so stacked against them that they have an excuse for not doing as well as they might?
Are you saying the race card?
I've expressed myself in my own way. I mean, you obviously, have a very clear impression of prejudice.
Yes.
We've gone through the figures which Andrew has produced, which don't actually, in this instance,
I don't
anyway,
think that black people use racism as an excuse at all, no.
But if we're going to be taught things,
Yes.
we ought to be taught everything.
Yes.
And one of the things we ought to be taught are what those figures actually show.
But if you take the senior civil service
So
or
what was
senior
the question before?
Well, I wasn't really asking you a question. I was
Okay.
just saying, if you believe that things should be taught,
Yes.
then the figures that have come out here, which didn't demonstrate what we thought they might demonstrate, are also something that people ought to understand. In other words, if there are black people there saying, I've no hope of going to university, well, no, go to the figures and find out that actually your chances of going to university
Okay.
are not as good as an Indian kid, but they're better than a white kid.
I don't think that you're looking at the details. I don't think that you're looking at what a person of colour experiences in that time of going to school and going to university. Yes, they may go to university, but what is their experience within that school structure? What is their experience within the education system? My self-worth and my low self-worth by the time that I got to university was largely because of my experience in the education system and how my well-being was put to a side and overlooked in favour of the white.
That is the worst point and worst argument to bring up, as if all people of colour, as he likes to call them, are. People have individual experiences, and as they just showed you in the stats, these people go on to succeed in life, but of course you want to complain and make them out to be victims because it's easy for you to do, and I can see why you've come to the stage you are right now in life, because you have a weak mind, and not everyone is weak-minded like yourself. You've experienced some things in university, boo-hoo, as if you're the only one, and boo-hoo as if black people, or people of colour as you like to call them, are the only ones who experience things in colleges and schools and universities. You're not the only one, and you talk as if white people go into school and they're just handed everything in life and given everything. That's just utter bullcrap, and you want to make people victims, and people who look up to you will look at you and say that they are victims, and they'll go through their life thinking that they are victims, which is just pure stupidity and nonsensical. You can do what you want, and you can continue to have that mindset and live your life as if everyone is against you and the white man is against you. You can live that life and have that mindset. I, on the other hand, don't look at life like that, and I go out to get what I need to get in life, and I'll continue to live like that.
And my histories and my role models just weren't there. My sex education was not there. My looking into gender was not there. Everything that would be of empowering, a source of empowerment for myself, was not there. I did not feel supported with the education system. Yes, I went to university too, but I really did not benefit from my high school experience.
Can anything be done?
Yes, and it did sound quite futile on the film, but I do feel like we all need to be on the same page in how we combat this. And I don't feel like white people should be so defensive when it comes to talking about racism. It is a very tough situation and tough subject for everybody to talk about. But really, we need to just bear in mind that it doesn't affect white people.
But the answer is that white people have to do things.
Yes.
It's not simply... And
I think that's what the problem is, really.
But you don't have to be, as a white person, you might not be violent or oppressive. You might just be ignorant.
Yeah.
And actually, there were the figures you quoted there, but if you look at the senior echelons of business or the civil service, there's gross underrepresentation of black people. The question is, are white people at the top of those organisations every day saying, what are we doing about it? But unless they are, you won't combat it.
We're going to have to...
But not so futile about it. And I think that's why so many black people feel so futile about it. And I don't think that... We could, but it's a very big could.
Just a bunch of nonsense to try and make people out to be victims and to try and sell black people and people of color, as they call them again, their oppression. He brought up the facts and the stats of how Asians perform better than black people and white people, but of course they just dismiss it and talk about representation as if we're here for representation or we're here to actually get the best people to do the job. But of course, in the economy of making people feel good, they don't care about getting the job done as long as the job is getting to make people feel good. But anyway, that was another video. If you guys enjoyed the video, as I said, like the video as much as possible, comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at YinkaThatGuy, and I am out.